Okay, moving on to the last and final division that we will be breaking down for today's show. That will be the AFC North. And unfortunately, Andrew had to leave early, so it's just going to be me breaking down this division with you guys. But I just wanted to say big shout out to my guy, Andrew Weisner, for coming on this show. Very fun guest I always have on. He's going to be on the show multiple times as we get closer and closer to Thursday night and the start of football season. So thanks again to Andrew for coming on this show. Let's talk about the AFC North, because I think the Baltimore Ravens are the one team that the majority of everyone is going to pick to win this division. When you look at the fact that they return the returning MVP in Lamar Jackson, they bring back Coach Harbaugh, they bring back basically all the weapons that they had last year along with a very good defense. But I think when you look closer and closer at where this Baltimore Raven team really does sit right now, I think there are some concerns. Number one, going into this season, there is going to be a tremendous amount of pressure on this Baltimore Raven team to finally win and succeed in the playoffs. The first year of Lamar Jackson, when they lost at home to the LA Chargers, was that obviously a super frustrating loss? Yes. Could they have done better? Yes. But at the same time, it was a rookie quarterback performing in his first ever playoff start. I don't think you could really, flat out bash a guy for just not performing well in his first ever playoff start. You then look at the following year, last year, that's where the excuses stopped. This Baltimore Raven team last year was the best team in the NFL during the regular season. And then in the playoffs, I don't really know what happened, but something happened. And still, I think there is some belief on this Raven team that it's hard for them to get over the hump. And I don't necessarily know for me if it's going to be that easy to just automatically pick this Baltimore Raven team as one of the 2 or 3 best teams in all of football. At the same time, they also lost Marshall Yanda, one of the best offensive linemen in the history of the National Football League, and I don't really think they've done that good of a job to replace him. They haven't really brought in like that one impact guy to really replace him yet, so I think that part of their offensive line could have some concerns. I also think that when you look at their defense and everything that happened with Earl Thomas, I don't really know what happened there. I know Baltimore historically is usually known to be one of the more well-run organizations in all of football, but at the same time, letting a player like Earl Thomas go this closely to the start of the season, I think could be a possible concern. And when you look at the weapons on this team, Willie Snead doesn't really scare me. We'll see what Marquise Brown could do, one of the more talented receivers in football, one of the fastest receivers in football. But I don't know, after watching him for just one season last year, if he's ready to be the number 1 receiver on one of the best teams in the league. I like Mark Ingram, but he's not getting any younger. They bring in J.K. Dobbins. I think he'll be fine. But I just don't know if this Raven team is going to be able to fool everyone as much as they did last year. One of the main reasons why last year I like the Ravens so much is because they really adapted to the philosophy of we're going to zig when everyone else is zagging. You guys know, especially last year and really now in today's modern day era of football, that it's a passing league. And when you have a quarterback, you're going to want him to throw the ball as many times as possible, and you're going to believe in him as a real decision maker. But Baltimore kind of zigged when the rest of the league zagged because they focused and built an offense solely around the concept and the scheme of running the football. And that makes Coach Harbaugh, by far and away one of the best coaches in the league for doing that. His ability to do that and make those subtle changes on the fly, I think was just super impressive. And once again, he deserves credit for that. When you look at this Raven defense, they lose Earl Thomas once again. I think that could be somewhat of a concern. They're going to need their guys like Calais Campbell that they brought in, like Brandon Williams. They also brought in Patrick Queen, the rookie linebacker from LSU. I think he'll be good for them as well. But at the same time, I just think last year, Baltimore, as good as they were in the regular season, they still needed to prove to me that they can not only win big games in the playoffs, but that they could just get the job done in a big spot, period. This Raven team hasn't won, a playoff game in a while. You forget, before 2 years ago, there were some Raven fans that wanted Coach Harbaugh fired before they drafted Lamar Jackson, and he's able to do a really good job building the team around Lamar and getting his quarterback in as good in as good as a position to succeed as possible. But at the same time, I just think Baltimore, everything went right for them last year. They were really able to stay healthy. Their quarterback was phenomenal and the darling of the league. And now that the league has seen him for a little longer, I think they're going to be ready. And I think Baltimore, as good as they were last year, I think they take a slight step back. Okay, so based on everything I just said, you'll probably be able to assume that I don't have the Baltimore Ravens winning the AFC North. I actually have the Pittsburgh Steelers winning the AFC North for a couple reasons. Number one, I'll just flat out say it. I think in 2020, the best defense in the NFL will be the Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe in these guys. I think this unit is absolutely phenomenal. TJ Watt is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's one of the best players in the league, one of the more underrated players in the league, and all the attention that his brother gets, I think he's better than his brother right now. He's phenomenal. TJ Watt is a player that I will always want to have on my team. On defense, they also bring back Minkah Fitzpatrick, who was phenomenal for them down the stretch last year after he arrived. They also bring back Bud Dupree, playing in what probably will be his last year as a Steeler, but he deserves that money. It probably won't be in Pittsburgh. I know he'll want to have a big last season there. They also bring back Devin Bush, a former top 10 pick, former player out of the University of Michigan. He was getting better and better in pass coverage last season. He could always get to the quarterback. I really like him. They have Vince Williams, and Mike Tomlin's a good defensive coach. I'll get to in a little bit to why I think there is a lot of pressure on Mike Tomlin for this upcoming season. But when I look at this defense, I think he has a unit that could really be one of the better units in the league. I believe in these guys, and I am really looking forward to see what exactly this Pittsburgh Steelers defense could do for an encore in 2020 after what they did just phenomenally in 2019. But then you look at the offense, and this is where, for me and a lot of other people, where the questions for this Pittsburgh Steelers team really does lie. And when you look at the way the Steelers are set up on the offensive side of the ball, number one is this. They were able to win 8 games last year with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph as their quarterback. And if you want to have any questions about Ben Roethlisberger and how he's going to do this season, I get it. But one thing I'll say about Big Ben is this. I'm confident that he's going to be better this year than Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges were last year, because both of those guys were abysmal, and as good of this as the Steelers' defense was, they were never really given a fair chance to win games with those two as their starting quarterbacks. So I just think Big Ben by himself will win them some games. You look at their receivers, I like Juju Smith-Schuster, but I think it's going to be a real prove-it season for him this year. He was bad down the stretch last year, and Pittsburgh never had a shot at being good with him without him, really contributing. Juju was probably not the Steelers' best receiver last year. For me, the answer to that question would be Deontay Johnson. I think he's going to break out this season and become one of the better wide receivers in football. He really developed some nice chemistry last year, and that was once again playing with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, two guys that I just don't think are anywhere close to good as Big Ben. They also bring in Eric Ebron as a tight end. I think he'll serve as a pretty valiant weapon. They bring in Chase Claypool, the rookie wide receiver from Notre Dame. I think he's going to be able to make some big-time plays. I think the Steelers' offensive line still around Villanueva and DeCastro and Pouncey. I know Pouncey's game has declined a little bit, but I still think that unit is good enough to get the job done. And hopefully James Conner could stay healthy. A lot of people think that the main reason why I'm going to like the Steelers and predict them to win the AFC North is because of their offense and playmakers. No, it's because of their defense. It's not only because Ben Roethlisberger is back. That's not really the main reason why I'm picking the Steelers to win the AFC North. It's the combination of him being back and their defense. And here's another take I'll have on the Steelers for you guys. I did some good. I picked the Steelers to win the AFC North, so I've been mostly positive so far. But I'll say this, Steeler fans, I know your pain. And if you're not confident in this team, I understand why. So I think if you miss the playoffs this year, Mike Tomlin should be fired. I think the pressure is on Mike Tomlin this year, and I'll tell you why. A lot of people are going to say, Zach, how could you fire Mike Tomlin? Not only is he a guy that has won multiple Super Bowls throughout his time as the head coach of Pittsburgh, but last year he led a team that had Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph as their starting quarterbacks with a record of 8-8. Why should he be fired? The reason why he should be fired if they don't make the playoffs is because last year you're acting like the season only lasted for 14 games. Mike Tomlin had the Steelers at 8-5 through 13 games, or 14 games last year. He had the Steelers at 8-5 through 14 games last year. And the Steelers' last 3 games of the season were all games that they really should have won. All games that on paper they were favored to win. And unfortunately, Mike Tomlin and company could not get the job done. And that is my main concern with this Pittsburgh Steelers team, is that Mike Tomlin couldn't get the job done in those games. And I'm not 100% confident that this season he'll be able to get the job done in those games. You also look at what he's done in total as a collective unit during his time as Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. Really, since 2010, when they lost the Super Bowl to the Green Bay Packers, I think the Steelers have been one of the more disappointing teams in the whole NFL. When you look at that game, you look at the Tim Tebow game, you look at plenty of other playoff games in the past against the New England Patriots, where this team just really wasn't able to get the job done. And I think if I had any concerns for the Steelers, that would really be it. But at the same time, I'm really looking forward to watching this defense play, and we'll see if Mike Tomlin and company will be able to get the job done. The next team in the AFC North that I want to talk about is the Cleveland Browns, and I think there's a lot of things to say about this Cleveland Brown team. We'll start off with the first thing, and it's kind of the elephant in the room. We all know what happened with this Cleveland Brown team last year. We know that going into last season, there were so many talented guys that they brought in to be on this roster, like Odell Beckham. They had Jarvis Landry, Baker Mayfield, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, plenty of guys along with Freddie Kitchens as their head coach. And even though they had plenty of talent on those units at the skill position, they really didn't have much talent on the offensive line. And they obviously didn't have a very good head coach. And unfortunately for Cleveland, their season fell flat. Baker Mayfield just really wasn't good at all, and they missed the playoffs. And thankfully for the Browns, they ended up firing Freddie Kitchens. I think that was a move where when they made it, they just didn't really have a choice. This guy was so bad as a head coach last season. There was no adult in the room, and I think that was Cleveland's number one problem last year, which they have obviously solved so far. You then look at how the rest of the team is built. Baker Mayfield at quarterback is interesting because I've always been a fan of Baker Mayfield. I've always loved what he was able to do throughout his college career while at the University of Oklahoma. But at the same time, he wasn't good last year, and I don't think there's any question to that. And as good as he was at Oklahoma, I was still very surprised when I found out the Cleveland Browns were going to be taking him with the number 1 pick in the draft. And his rookie year, he was good, and last year he was not. So what does that mean? This year is it's the make or break year. And I do think if Baker Mayfield does not play well this season, then there's a chance that the Cleveland Browns at this time next season could have a different starting quarterback. Because all of the excuses that Baker struggled with and used last season are now officially down the drain. And what do I mean by that? A lot of people that like Baker Mayfield and believe in him as the Browns starting quarterback of the future will say, oh, well, last year, the main reason why Baker Mayfield wasn't very good was because he had a very bad head coach in Freddie Kitchens, which is true, and that he didn't really have a very good offensive line, which is true. But this year, they bring in Kevin Stefanski to be their new head coach from Minnesota. You like the work that he was able to do with Kirk Cousins throughout his 2 years there. I think that was a pretty solid partnership with Stefanski and Cousins. So he's going to be able to work with Baker Mayfield now. They bring back Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt at running back. This is also, if you don't realize, Kareem Hunt was suspended during the first half of last year, and he's going to be able to come into Kansas City now and have a full season under his belt. They also bring back OBJ, they bring back Jarvis Landry, and their offensive line should be very improved with Jedrick Wills at left tackle and Jack Conklin in right tackle. Conklin, a free agent that they brought in from Tennessee, and Jedrick Wills, first-round pick from Alabama. On defense, they bring back Myles Garrett, they bring back Denzel Ward, they bring back Sheldon Richardson, Olivier Vernon. There are still some names on this defense that I think should get the job done. But there were last year in Cleveland, and I still think there are plenty of question marks with this Cleveland Brown team. They lost Grant Delpit, a guy that I thought was going to have a very significant impact as an inside linebacker. He got hurt, and it was announced that he was out for the season in training camp. That's obviously an awful, awful loss for this Cleveland Browns team. I love Grant Delpit. He's a guy that I could watch play for days. And I just think that the Browns are going to be one of the more interesting teams in football. I think they're playing in a tough AFC North obviously doesn't help them, but I still think they're going to be in the wild card race. And Baker Mayfield, it's really going to be interesting to see what his head coach and him could do in order to break the drought in Cleveland. We know how long it's been since this Cleveland Brown team has made a playoff, and I'm really excited to see, with new head coach Kevin Stefanski and all the talent on this team, if they're going to be able to get the job done. One bold prediction I'll have for the Cleveland Browns is I think Odell Beckham Jr. is going to have a very big season for Cleveland. I think that there is no reason why this guy shouldn't be one of the 5 best receivers in the National Football League. Hopefully he could stay healthy. Hopefully he could really develop some better chemistry with Baker Mayfield than he has in the past. And I really like OBJ and his athleticism. I still believe in it. So with that being said, I have Cleveland coming in 3rd in the AFC North, Baltimore in 2nd. But I think Cleveland is going to be in the playoff race the whole season. And at the back end of this podcast, I'll be giving you guys my predictions for the playoffs. Maybe, just maybe, Cleveland will be a wild card. Okay, moving on to the next and final team that we will be breaking down here in the AFC North, and that will be Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think there is some optimism, there is some excitement when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals, just because last year it was obviously really bad. They never were in that solid of a position to win any games. They ended up with the number 1 overall pick. They ended up moving on from Andy Dalton. And the thing with this Cincinnati Bengal team that I think is interesting is that they drafted a quarterback number 1 overall, and I actually think they have done a solid job of surrounding him with weapons and putting him at least in a possible position to succeed. I like, obviously, Tyler Boyd, one of the more underrated receivers in the league. AJ Green should hopefully be healthy. If he is on the field, he's obviously a player that will always be able to make a big-time impact. They also drafted T. Higgins early in the 2nd round. We know everything that he did throughout his college career at Clemson. You also have Joe Mixon as a running back, one of the more underrated backs in the league. Now, there obviously are some concerns. You look at this offensive line, that's really what I wanted to see them address with their draft picks. Unfortunately, they didn't really do that. So I think hopefully they're going to have to be able to protect Joe Burrow as much as possible. That's obviously going to be one main concern. And then on defense, there are some guys that I like by bringing in Von Bell and DJ Reader, veterans like that. I didn't really expect them to have that mentality, but I think when you bring those guys in and combine them with some solid players like Jesse Bates, like Mackenzie Alexander, who they brought in as well, who's going to be their starting left corner, Geno Atkins, Carlos Dunlap, guys that have been there a while, I think there can be some room for optimism for the Cincinnati Bengal team. I have them finishing in 4th in the AFC West just due to the fact that Joe Burrow isn't experienced, and you do worry that with not the full repertoire of reps that he usually would get with his first team offense. It's unfortunate that he wasn't really able to get everything in that he usually would have. It's a lot of people are just saying it's not really a great season to be a rookie quarterback, but I do think the fact that he has weapons that a lot of other quarterbacks throughout the league just flat out don't have, I think that could be something that could help Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengal team, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he could do. His story is phenomenal. The bottom line is that going into last college football season, people would have laughed at you if you told them on draft day Tua Tagovailoa wouldn't be the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and Joe Burrow made that happen. He also went into Tuscaloosa last year and beat Alabama. He beat Florida at home. He beat Auburn at home. He beat Clemson in the national championship and threw 7 touchdowns in the first half against Oklahoma in Atlanta in the Peach Bowl last year. The amount of big games that this guy and this LSU team won last year were phenomenal. And I think in the NFL, do I think he's going to be, the next Patrick Mahomes? No. But I think he could be a very good Tony Romo type, a guy that is, there for his team the whole way, a guy that has a very long career in the National Football League, and a guy that, even though he may never be the best quarterback in the league, ever. He may be one of the more consistent quarterbacks that always plays and is successful and leads his team to multiple playoff appearances on a consistent basis. I really like what this guy could do. I like the weapons that his team surrounded him with. I think the Bengals will go around 5-11 this year. I have them coming in 4th in the AFC North. And once again, to recap, I have the Steelers winning the AFC North, with the Ravens coming in 2nd, the Browns coming in 3rd, and the Bengals coming in 4th.